Hell, a place that has fascinated and terrified humanity for centuries, serving as both a domain of ultimate punishment and a realm of moral reckoning. In the biblical sense, hell is portrayed as a place of eternal punishment, reserved for the wicked and those who reject God. It is often described as a place of unquenchable fire, intense suffering, and darkness, where the soul is separated from God's presence. As many Christians today believe, hell is the immediate destination for sinners who have died, though it is true to say that much of what we know about this particular hell is inferred from biblical texts, which has led to the rise of specific imagery and concepts that aren't necessarily explicit in doctrine. Today, we will make our way through the diverse and haunting depictions of hell found in biblical literature, discovering how such concepts have shaped our collective understanding of eternal damnation, including a journey through the fiery realms of Gehenna and out through the shadowy abyss of the Sheol. Through such vivid descriptions, we'll aim to gain a clearer idea of what hell represents, both as theological doctrine and as a reflection of humanity's deepest fears about sin, punishment, and the afterlife itself. What's interesting about the Hebraic narrative is that the term hell does not appear in the original narrative. Indeed, whilst it was added into the account by the time of the King James translation, it was instead referred to as Sheol, a place mentioned 66 times in this narrative. To the ancient Israelites, Sheol was something of a mass grave, an enormous underworld where the dead would congregate. Unlike the traditional notions of hell made popular in later traditions, the ancient Israelite concept of hell, this Sheol, was more akin to the Mesopotamian underworld of Ker, a dwelling filled with nothing but darkness and dust. As far as Ker went in Mesopotamian belief, suffering here existed on a less visceral scale. Instead, those who found themselves here were condemned to wander in the pitch black, unaware of who was around them and what they were up to. What makes it more unsettling is that the body did not lose its appetite here, and if one wanted to satiate their hunger, they'd have to eat dust, mud, and dirty water, the only sustenance that was available. Some compare this somewhat more mundane version of the fiery hells found later in Christian belief to that of the Greek Hades, another dreary netherworld that existed solely for housing those who had passed away. However, a closer metaphorical explanation can be established that this Sheol was actually symbolic for the body being buried. Like with the Sheol, the grave or pit was shrouded in darkness and more often than not, shoulder width apart from other bodies that shared the same plot. There was nothing for one to do in this plot, this Sheol, nothing but endlessly wait and decompose in a place that was devoid of any colour and any activity. The mentions of Sheol in scripture, though frequent, are quite brief. Most of the time, the author is keen to express gratitude for having escaped the daunting realm, as we see in Psalms 32-3. O Lord, my God, I cry to you for help, and you have healed me. O Lord, you brought up my soul from Sheol, restored me to life from among those gone down to the pit. The same sentiment is echoed again in Psalms 86:12-13. I will give thanks to you, O Lord, my God, with my whole heart, for great is your steadfast love towards me. You have delivered my soul from the depths of Sheol. Evidently, people in the Bible were relieved to have been rescued from this domain, and whilst they aren't too expressive about what exactly went on down there, it might speak to how terrible it really was, that they were unwilling to go into any detail of what was down there. Many characters, as early as Jacob in Genesis, speak of Sheol as if it were common knowledge. When Jacob learns that his favourite son Joseph is apparently dead, he remarks that he himself will go down to Sheol. Such is the extent of his grief. Sheol is later mentioned in the Book of Numbers, when Korah attempts to incite the Israelites against Moses. Here, Moses promises that God will split open the earth and hurl Korah and his family into the dreaded realm. which actually does transpire. Moses later adds in Deuteronomy that the anger of God is a fire that burns in the depths of the Sheol, where it consumes the entire earth from the bottom up. The prophet Isaiah, meanwhile, goes to great lengths to even personify the Sheol, referring to it as possessing an ever-increasing hunger for living men, with an inclination for souls of sinners, where their pleas and prayers cannot escape, nor even reach God's ears. This goes hand in hand with the descriptions in the book of Job, which attempt to give us a geographical estimate as to where the Sheol is, which is at the greatest possible distance from heaven, out of earshot of God in some respects, in the furthest depths of the earth. Both of these books supply us with some troubling imagery of such a place, where it is described as a land with great gates, with farthest corners. Here the dead lead a non-life, a pale existence without knowledge or feeling, a comatose zombified experience that none can escape from. Yet when we consider Psalms, as mentioned earlier, there are those who do escape, likely on the account of being freed as a result of God's mercy, and considering their reaction to being rescued, it does suggest that those living here do maintain some awareness of their damned state. Another realm we see that sounds a lot like the modern idea of hell is a place known as Gehenna, or Gehinnom, that shows up in both the Old and New Testament in slightly different ways. In the Old Testament, Gehenna, though not referenced by name, was believed to be a real terrestrial location, a small valley to the south of Jerusalem, known as the Valley of the Son of Hinnom. This valley has a bit of a dark history, for it was believed to be the site by which the ancient Canaanites made sacrifices to the god Moloch by burning their own children alive. This led to the consensus that this valley was a cursed place, and because its associations with the sacrifices were so gruesome and disturbing, it easily became a figurative equivalent of hell. In later traditions, this Gehenna became to be known as the burning place, a place literally emblazoned with a perpetual fire. Such a notion can be traced back to the 13th century scholar Rabbi David Kimhi, who wrote that the fires were maintained in this cursed valley to incinerate waste and the cadavers of animals, but also could be used to execute criminals, of whom were thrown into these fires as punishment for their wicked ways. In this sense, Gehenna differs quite drastically from the Sheol. In this tradition, Gehenna is a tangible place. It can be visited, but it also served as more than just a realm of punishment, but actually a waste management system. Furthermore, this concept leads us to believe that Gehenna was a man-made construct, not a divine one, and was born more so out of a superstition for the dark events that had occurred there previously, courtesy of the Canaanite sacrifices. It should come as no surprise, however, that we do not have any archaeological nor textual evidence to support this idea that the Valley of the Son of Hinnom was converted into one giant furnace, where you could throw your old things away. Instead, it's more likely that this valley, this Gehenna, became looked upon as a symbolic place for bad things, and that the only thing the valley was good for, after the area had been so tainted by the Canaanites, was for setting it on fire, where it could be considered as the perfect location for waste, carcasses, and bad people. In other ideas from rabbinic literature, Gehenna is still a destination fit for the wicked, but it is much less a spectacle, like the Valley of the Son of Hinnom, and more like the Sheol. However, Gehenna in these circumstances appears to be more purgatorial in nature, whereby those who end up here can leave, once they have either served their sentence or atoned for their wrongdoings. There are those, however, that believe Gehenna is still nonetheless found in the Valley of the Son of Hinnom, but that it can only be accessed via specific gates that are found wedged between certain palm trees. Other accounts suggest that Gehenna can only be accessed through a small hole that lies at the bottom of the ocean. Here, some describe Gehenna as being a huge subterranean abyss that, like the universe, is ever expanding to accommodate new people who have died. To many modern believers, the concept of Sheol and Gehenna are not recognized, This is largely due to the fact that the King James Version of the Bible does not recognize them either, but rather simplifies these phrases and concepts and presents them with the all-encompassing Anglo-Saxon word of hell. Gone are the nuances between a shadowy, overcrowded purgatory, where one wanders about as a living corpse, and gone are the nuances behind the inferno that rages through the valley of the son of Ben Hinnom. Instead, through this translation, modern readers are encouraged to shuffle past these more cryptic and multifaceted concepts of the afterlife and look toward the more broad and popularized underworld that's a bit more black and white. Though it wasn't just the King James translation that ushered in this new way of thinking. There are those who believe that towards the end of the Old Testament period, and during the times Jesus was believed to walk the earth, Jewish thinking had come to form the ideas of a last day of judgment. In some Jewish sects, it is believed that when a person dies, they will not experience heaven or hell immediately, but rather experience nothing until the events of humanity have played out, and God brings back to life both the righteous and the wicked. The righteous get to live forever in a peaceful kingdom upon the earth, established by God, whilst the wicked are simply obliterated from existence, not sent down to some fiery hell to suffer for eternity, as commonly suggested today. Some scholars agree that this view was likely the view shared by Jesus and his earliest followers, who did not appear to believe that the souls of the dead were sent to either heaven or hell. This idea of the coming kingdom of God was at the heart of Jesus' teachings, and was a message his disciples would continue to preach long after his death. Of course, the end that Jesus had predicted and the coming kingdom did not transpire in those times, and so according to some scholars, the message had to be transformed so that the prediction did not lose its relevance. Instead, it came to be believed that we would not experience an afterlife at the end of humanity's cycle, but rather at the end of our own individual lifetimes. With this idea, the idea of punishment and reward moved beyond the concepts of eternal life and complete obliteration, and evolved into two different worlds, one of paradise and one of suffering, heaven and hell. It isn't until the New Testament do we get a familiar description of hell that fits the more modern perspective of what hell looks like. It is the accounts by Matthew that really help to shape the idea of hell being this fiery underworld that is more congruent with modern interpretation. In chapter 5 of his Gospel, Matthew refers to the dangers of hellfire, that being an everlasting punishment, where one will literally roast for eternity if they are sinful. We are told that this place, this dreaded infernal place, was so bad that if you'd seen your fair share of sin, it was better to pluck your eyes out and live as a blind man, than to keep both your eyes and go to hell, for that reality was far worse. Later, Matthew remarks that hell is a realm of darkness, and that if one is sent here, there will be much weeping and gnashing of teeth, giving us the idea that this is a place of not only sadness and depression, but a savage land full of pain and anger, enough to cause one to go about gnashing their teeth. Prior to this though, he also makes reference to angels separating the wicked from the righteous, and that the former will be thrown into the furnace of fire as punishment for their transgressions. The main bulk of hell's imagery, however, comes from the prophetic visions in Revelation, where we are treated to a diverse set of apocalyptic depictions. It is in chapter 20 where we see some of the more graphic elements of hell, including a bottomless pit, by which the Archangel Michael cast down Satan for 1,000 years. Whether or not this pit was a punishment exclusively for Satan is not entirely known to us, but it is nonetheless quite disturbing for believers that this could be a reality that many would face. Some may see parallels to the Zoroastrian or Hindu hell of Nakara, where bottomless pits are common punishments in certain layers of the underworld, where sinners of a special kind are locked into a sequence of eternal freefall. After this account of the bottomless pit, we are introduced to one of the more infamous features of the modern hell, the lake of fire and brimstone. Here we are told that those who were deceived by the devil are cast into this lake and shall be tormented here, day and night, forever and ever. Revelation also reveals that anyone whose name is not written in the book of life, that is to say, those who are not considered worthy by God, will be cast into this lake and suffer the excruciating punishment of being perpetually incinerated. If we were to consult biblical Apocrypha, that which isn't considered canon nor true by most scholars and believers, we do get a much more vivid and disturbing account of what the Judeo-Christian image of hell looks like. If we were to consult the Apocalypse of Paul, for example, a 4th century pseudepigraphical book purportedly ascribed to Paul the Apostle, we see that hell consists of several rivers that erupt with flames, and stinking pits that are filled with non-believers to rot in. It's interesting that the author of this text maintains the two components of rivers or lakes and giant pits from the Revelation account here. But there are some additional features we get given to us not found in the Bible, including hell not necessarily being a realm of flames and heat, but rather a place with different extreme climates. In the northern hemisphere of hell, for example, we are told that this is glacier-like, where the temperature drops below freezing and is battered with deadly snowfall. I suppose it allows the reader to consider the age-old conundrum of whether you'd rather be too hot or too cold. Aside from this, we also learn that hell is filled with creatures, most notably worms, and that there are angels here, but these angels torture people with ungodly instruments. Meanwhile, in the Apocalypse of Peter, another apocalyptic text written in the 2nd century and believed to be ascribed to Peter the disciple, is similar to the aforementioned text, in that angels descend upon the people who are sent here and proceed to torture them. Sinners can expect to experience gory punishments, including being hanged by their tongues, and then repeatedly drowned in the lake of fire. Those who have affairs and break their marriage vows are believed to be roasted over dung, or have their heads submerged in excrement as punishment for their deception. Murderers, on the other hand, are seen to be devoured by worms, all for the amusement of their victims, who are allowed to visit them and watch their suffering. Those who practice witchcraft are nailed to spinning wheels that are lit on fire. Disobedient children are picked apart by monstrous birds, and quite chillingly, those who cry out to God only have their punishments intensified. According to some Eastern Orthodox beliefs, heaven and hell is not a place per se, but actually an extension of God's presence, that which can either be felt as paradise if one is a good person, or can be felt as a torment if one is a bad person. With this belief, the extent by which one may experience paradise, or torment, can differ depending on the way one has lived their life. For example, one who has loved and worshipped God will experience the complete tranquility that paradise has to offer, whereas one who has shunned or hated God will find themselves experiencing unmitigated anguish. There are also those of this faith who view hell as merely a separation from God, and that hell is anywhere that God is not present. In some ways, it is more of a spiritual concept, in that those who have closed themselves off to God do not therefore get to experience His love, and thus, this by comparison to those who believe this, is a form of hell. With this belief, there are those who believe that we create hell by ourselves, and that it is not this place of fire and brimstone, but rather a worse existence engineered by our own choices. According to some Roman Catholic views, hell can be seen not necessarily as a place, but also as the Eastern Orthodox viewpoint ascertains, a state. According to this view, when one dies, they are condemned not to burn in the lake of fire, but are deprived of God's love for all eternity. This in itself becomes a torment that most will find nearly impossible to bear, and that this sudden removal of God's love will render the soul of the person as much lesser than it was before. This in itself can be defined as suffering, according to scholars who subscribe to this notion. Pope John Paul II once stated that hell was not necessarily a place, and that the Bible used symbolic language to describe this feature of the afterlife. He stated, "Rather than a place, hell indicates the state of those who freely and definitively separate themselves from God, the source of all life and joy." Of course, traditionally, hell has been considered an actual place and continues to be defined as such by modern believers today. Some even propose that hell is somewhere on earth, similar to that of the early belief that it was located at the valley of the son of Hinnom. Most agree though that if this is the case, then no one knows exactly where it is, though some theories argue it is likely so far underground that we'd never have a chance of finding it, or very deep under the ocean bed. One more outlandish theory is that the earth we inhabit today is hell, and that we've already died, and are living a second existence in this realm so as to atone for the mistakes and transgressions of a former life in another higher plane. In any case, the words of St. Augustine might ring true here, where in a posthumous addition to St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica stated, "I am of the opinion that no one knows in what part of the world hell is situated, unless the Spirit of God has revealed this to someone." The biblical imagery of the lake of fire and the bottomless pit has served as the foundation for many Christian depictions of eternal damnation, offering vivid pictures of fire, torment, and a separation from God. Over time, these stark images were expanded by apocryphal writings, which introduced ideas such as angels or demons torturing souls, further amplifying the horror of what we can expect from hell. However, it was not just religious texts that shaped our understanding of hell. Writers like Dante Alighieri, in his Divine Comedy, played a crucial role in fleshing out these concepts with deeply imaginative and symbolic representations. Dante's Inferno introduced a layered, meticulously structured hell, where souls are punished according to their sins in life. His portrayal of hell has left an indelible mark on Western thought, blending biblical elements with creative interpretations that resonate to this day. Ultimately, the hell we imagine today, whether as a fiery underworld, a place of relentless torture, or a realm of divine judgment, draws from both scripture and centuries of interpretation. These collective visions continue to shape our beliefs, filling in the gaps between the ancient texts and modern notions of eternal punishment. All in all, it is St. Augustine's aforementioned words that sum up most of our ideas of hell, which leaves us with a disturbing realization that we won't know what it's really like until we get there. As always guys, if you've enjoyed today's episode, then don't forget to leave this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more content just like this. Until next time.